Hi everybody, welcome back to another video. I wanted to do a video today on a Hobonichi journal with me. We're going to go ahead and do a journal with me in my Hobonichi Techo A6. This is the English version of the Hobonichi, and I absolutely love this journal. I love the paper. The quality of the Tomoe River paper is insane. It really makes everything so much better. I have all of my supplies. I wanted to do a journal with me. Now in my A6, I like to journal about things that I like, things that I enjoy. It's basically my art journal, and so most of the things in this journal are doodles. And so today I wanted to do a doodle of my Jane Davenport watercolor tin. And I have all of my supplies. I'm going to be using my Orange 0.2 pencil with my Tombow Mono Zero eraser, and I'm going to use my Pilot Micron in the 02 size. This is a little bit wider. The nib is a little bit wider than I prefer, but I think for the sake of the video and the sake of the drawing, it'll be a nice sharp line that will definitely show through on the camera. So let's go ahead and start. I have picked out this beautiful washi with these really pretty colorful polka dots that I think will go really well with the colors of the watercolor tin because they are very bright. And so I think the dots on the washi would just match perfectly with that. So I'm going to start by laying down my washi tape. Now the only thing I have to figure out is if I want my dots going up or my dots going down. And I think, let's see, I think I'm going to have my dots going down as if they're cascading onto the page going down. So there is a quote on here. Every Hobonichi comes with a quote. The English version comes with the English quotes, and I really don't care for the quote. Even though it is in English, I'm not really a person who cares for the quotes, so I like to go ahead and cover that with washi tape. I think washi makes a really pretty decoration, and so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to lay down my washi and make sure that it's nice and straight. Although it's not wide enough to cover all the writing, you probably can see that on camera, but it does. The lettering does poke out on the top and on the bottom. I'm okay with that. So I use my handy dandy Hobby Lobby gift card to cut that. I like the way that edge looks when you use the card to cut it as opposed to using the scissor. So let's get started with our doodle. I'm opening my tin so that I can look at it and reference back as I do my drawing. I'm going to go ahead and do it in pencil first so that I can go over my lines with the micron. And that's usually the way I do my drawings, unless I'm really good at a doodle, then I go ahead and go straight with the pen. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead with the pencil first, do the drawing in pencil, make sure I perfect my lines. And even though it is a doodle, I do like things to look nice and neat and straight, and so I'm doing that here. You see me going over my lines and using my eraser, and I like the eraser because it's very fine, so I can get in the lines without having to erase a chunk of the drawing just exactly where I need to go. So I like the way that looks, except for that top lid. It's looking a little wonky, so I'm going to go ahead and erase that and try to do that over so that it kind of looks a little bit more size wise. It compares more to the middle and the bottom flap. Now here I'm doing those wells that you see at the bottom of the flap. There are those little 4 wells that you use for mixing your colors. I'm doing that right now in the drawing. I'm doodling those, and you know, it doesn't have to be size wise perfect. It's just a doodle, and that's what I'm doing here. I'm going to go ahead and finish my picture, and then once I'm done, I'm going to make sure all my lines are good to go, and if there's anything that I don't like, I'm going to go over with the pencil and make sure that I fix that. And then once my doodle is done with the pencil, I'm going to go ahead and go over my lines with the micron. Now, like I mentioned, I'm using the Micron 02 size Usually I use the 0.05 in the uni pin pen, but in this case, I think for the sake of the video, I like the way the micron 02 would look. So I'm going to use that. Now I'm just going over, trying to draw over the smallest details of the little hinges when you close those flaps. So that's what I'm doing. So here it is. I'm going to go ahead and go over it with my micron pen so that you guys can see it come to life. Once you put those lines down with the micron, it looks really, really beautiful. And it stands out on the page, and it'll be ready for the watercolor. So that's what I'm going to do. Just very carefully go over my lines so that I can stay as close to my original pencil drawings, because it'll be a shame if I didn't go over my pencil lines. Then it wouldn't look like the pencil drawing. So I'm doing that, and I'm going to go ahead and do that throughout my picture so that I can get those lines nice and dark. And here I am with the middle where those watercolor wells, the paints, are actually stored. And then here I am just drawing more lines. And then I'm going to go ahead and finish those wells at the bottom, going over the lines. Now, as you can see, once you go over with the micron or anything, you know, if you use a different color pen to go over your pencil lines, it just brings that picture to life. And then once you add that color in there, oh, it's going to look beautiful. So I'm just going ahead and going over the smallest details of the hinges of the drawing there. And there it is. I'm happy. I love it. I think it looks beautiful. Now let's go ahead and write our little journal entry. Now it doesn't really have to be anything specific. Now in this case, I'm going to use the Pilot Canuno pen in the fine point. I like to use that Pilot Kakuno with the Noodler's gray, permanent gray, because if my watercolor runs, I don't have to worry about my lettering being ruined or getting smushed or getting smeared. So I like to have that that fountain pen ink in there. Now I'm just gonna go ahead and write about the doodle itself, something simple that doesn't have to take the whole page. It could just be 1 or 2 or 3 lines, or just a line, or just a little, you know, like a little quotation about it. Whatever it is that you want to write about, it's what you do in here. So in this case, that's what I'm doing. I'm just writing about how much I enjoy using the watercolor, how much the colors actually are so vibrant, and I love them, and they make me happy. I love to watercolor whenever I can, and this particular Hobonichi is about my doodles, and so there is a lot of watercoloring most of the time. In all of my doodles, there is watercoloring whenever I journal or plan. I do like to use the watercolor, so that's what basically I'm writing in here. You know, it's just little things, whatever it is that you feel like writing, you know, whatever makes you happy. If you looked at a picture of something and it made you happy, you know, doodle that, and you know, that'll definitely help you out with your skills, your drawing skills. I feel like the more I doodle, the more I draw, my drawing skills get so much better. They get refined, they get sharper, and you know, a lot of times lately I find that when I doodle, I don't have to necessarily use the pencil all the time. I can just go ahead and put the drawing down on the paper, and it comes out exactly as I picture it in my head. So I like that. I think it's a really good skill to master and to refine, and you never stop learning. So I like that. So that's what I'm doing. Now I'm done with my writing, and I'm gonna go ahead and erase all of my pencil marks. I'm gonna do that off camera so that I don't bore you with my erasing, and then I'm gonna come back once all of the erasing is done, and we're gonna go ahead and watercolor. So we're ready to watercolor. Now this is just a generic water pen that I like to use. It's very wet. I think I got it off of Etsy. I'm not sure where exactly I got it, but I like it. It's small, it's convenient. I can bring it with me wherever. It doesn't, I don't have to worry about it being too bulky. And although it does not fit in that particular tin, it does fit in another tin that I have. And then this one I like because it's very fine and I can get in the smallest crevices of my drawings without having to worry about it running out of the drawing lines. So I'm going to do that. Let's go ahead and get all of our supplies out of the way so that I can put my paper where I'm going to be dabbing those water pens to clean off the paint as I'm done using it. So I squeeze the water brush a little bit to make that water run and make that tip a little bit wet so that I can grab some of the color off of the well there. And then I'm just going to start laying down my colors. I'm trying to find an angle so that you guys can see as I lay my color down. I try to stay in the lines. I'm trying to be as neat as possible. And then I'm dabbing that paintbrush onto my paper and squeezing a little bit at a time so that the water can come out and I can clean off that color and then move on to the next color. Now I'm going to try to follow the color in the rows, how it is, so that I can stay pretty true to the actual item. I don't want to disturb the color and the way the item looks in real life because I want to be able to recall that item exactly as it looks if I was looking at it and hold it in my hands. So I'm going to stay pretty true to the actual item. So I'm cleaning my brush, I'm dabbing the color. You guys know the gist of it. You clean your brush, you dab the color, you lay your color down, and then you clean your brush, move on to the next color. Unless you're trying to draw a picture where you're actually mixing the colors, then that's okay. I like to keep my palettes pretty clean because I want every individual color to be accessible and available, as opposed to having, the yellow mixed in with the green and the red, and I don't like that. So that's just my preference. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with that. It's perfectly fine if that's your style. It's just my style is, pretty clean, pretty neat. And so that's why my colors are like that. Even my wells, I don't use this much. And I know that's probably not very artistic. Like an artist is messy and, but that's just my style. There's nothing wrong with the way that I do things as opposed to the way other people do things. So here it is. I'm continuing on with my coloring. I'm dabbing the color and I love the way it's looking. I think it's looking pretty true to the real thing. So I like it. I'm going to continue doing that. And then when I am done with all of the watercoloring, I'm going to go ahead and finish the rest of it. So let's continue doing that. Let's continue to dab, grab color, lay it down, and that's pretty much what I'm going to keep doing here. So now my ink at the bottom has also had a chance to dry, so I'm not really concerned with my hand smearing the ink that I put down in my writing. That's why I love the ink that's in that pen, because it doesn't necessarily dry. The way Tomoe River paper works is whatever you put on it, whatever medium, whether it's water, whether it's ink, whatever it is, it will lay on the top of the page and it will take a little bit for it to dry because it absorbs into the page like gradually. And so, but in this case, I think it's had pretty good amount of time to kind of cure a little bit. So I'm not really worried about me putting my hand on top of that writing and smearing it. Look at that. It's looking beautiful. I'm going to go ahead and just at the bottom on that flap, try to imitate a little bit of mixing, maybe me using the the watercolor palette, and then mixing the colors right at the bottom on that flap there. So that's what I'm trying to duplicate here. And I'm trying to make my brush as wet as possible so that when I put down the tip on the paper, the color runs. Now I'm not having so much luck with that because I'm afraid it's going to run too much. So I'm doing little by little. I'm very carefully trying to get those mixing drawings of the watercolor. So that's what I'm doing. And I think it's turning out to be really pretty. I'm going to continue to do that and very carefully try to mix the colors down there so that, you know, maybe run them next to each other so that they run and they mix, and then it looks more, you know, more realistic than just having an actual just picture of, you know, of the watercolor tin. So I'm liking the way that looks. Now I have to find a color that matches the outside of that watercolor tin. And I don't have that in this particular palette. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my other palette where I definitely know I have a color that matches that little pretty green, like a, you know, robin's egg, like pastel-y color. So I'm going to do that, and I think it's going to look exactly like that Jane Davenport watercolor palette. So I'm doing that there. I'm going to go ahead and do all of the edges, do that bottom part. So I try to do the 3D look of the actual tin. And then I'm going to run it over all the edges on the top lid and on, you know, the little hinges, because the hinges are that little pretty green. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm making sure I check where it is that that green needs to be laid down on. And I'm liking the way it looks. Now this particular color is very opaque, which means once you go over your lines, it will make your lines dull. So after I'm done with the green, the pastel green, I'm going to have to go over my lines again with my micron so that those lines can come to life one more time. So I'm doing that, doing the hinges here and the little crevices on the inside of the watercolor tin. And then I'm going to do very carefully do the outside edges, because the outside edges do show a little bit of the green. I know the camera is not really picking up, but I'm doing that here. And I'm liking the way this is turning out. I think it's really, really beautiful, and it's pretty true to the real thing. I'd say so myself. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Now, when you're watercoloring, always remember not to run your brush close to another color that you have already laid down on the paper, because if you do, your colors will mix, they will run, and then it will turn into a completely different color because your brush has a different color on now. So I'm doing that. I'm trying to be as careful as possible so that I don't run next to another color that I've already laid down, and then I have a completely different color or a brand new color going. So I'm doing that. I think the bottom flap does not have any green, so that one is going to get the white, and then I'm going to go ahead and color in those wells, color in the top wells as well, all white. Everything in the on the inside flaps is going to be white. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm coloring in with the white, and on camera you actually can see it's so pretty. The white does come to life. In person, you know, it doesn't look like the white is actually going down on the paper. It just looks like it's just blending in with the page. But on camera, you can actually see where I'm going with that white. So there it is. Once again, very carefully going in around my edges so that my colors don't run and then end up becoming a new color. So let's do that very carefully, a little bit more paint, and then let's do the top flap, those big wells there. Let's do those. Those are also white. As you can see, I have my tin, it's open so that I can tell what's white, and then I'm just going to go ahead and very carefully go on the inside there with the white so that it looks like the real tin there. Okay, very carefully making sure my tip isn't as wet so that it doesn't, you know, mistakenly touch the colors that I've already put there and then end up mixing and becoming another color. So I'm doing that. Let's see, there it is, very carefully, just barely, I mean barely touching that pen, that water brush pen tip onto the paper so that the color touches the paper. So there it is. I love the way it's turning out. I think it's actually It looks pretty true to life. I mean, I'm going to continue saying that, but it does look pretty good. I like it. So there it is. I think it's looking really beautiful. Really beautiful. So now I'm going over with my micron, making sure those lines are nice and sharp. And here it is, the final product. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. Here's a close-up of it. I did go ahead and add those hearts and that love word